After we recorded this episode, the Detroit Tigers optioned third baseman Jace Jung to Triple-A Toledo, which means he won't make the Tigers opening day roster. Keep that in mind as you listen to this week's episode of Days of Roar.
Welcome to Days of Roar, Detroit Tiger podcast, brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am here with Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold from a very eventful Evan Petzold week. Ev, let's run it down, baby. Week in review.
Yeah, working from home right now. So as many of you know, because we've discussed it on the podcast and I've posted about it on social media, Savannah and I, we've been expecting our first child in late April. And for those of you who need a refresher on the timeline, we got married September 8th, 2023. Then we went on that postseason honeymoon to Greece about 13 months later in October 2024. And now we've been expecting our first child in late April 2025. But the baby timeline has recently been sped up by a few weeks. So we're targeting early April for having our baby, but the doctors tell me it could happen anytime between now and then. So because of that, I'm back in Detroit, returned to Detroit from Lakeland. I'm going to be working from home for the foreseeable future. As for the family, got good news to report. Savannah's healthy and hanging in there, and our baby is healthy and doing outstanding. So only God knows when we're going to be parents, but the doctors say the baby's coming sooner rather than later. So that's why I came home on Friday morning. I'm going to try to keep everyone updated when it happens. But as for Tigers spring training coverage, our award-winning columnist, Jeff Seidel, is in Lakeland for the daily coverage. I'm still going to be pretty plugged in, at least until Savannah gives birth. So I'm not going anywhere until our baby is born. I have plenty to write about. And Mark, let's be honest, we have a lot to talk about this week. Only 10 days until opening day against the Dodgers in Los Angeles.
Well, Evan Petzold, if we do not have an unbelievably great guest on Days of Roar, that means we got a lot to talk about, because we have no problem getting great guests, except when we have a lot to talk about. So let's jump right into it. Question one of the big two, your latest opening day roster prediction. And let's kind of weave in the injury updates while we're doing it, because the roster prediction is massively impacted by these injury updates. So your version 4.0 came out on Monday morning. What roster battles, what position battles, what versatility battles? Tell me what's going on and exactly what the puppet master is doing with his roster, because you've got some pretty prominent injuries and it's causing him, I'm sure, some stress and some creativity needs.
Yeah, we got to start with the injuries, because the big news of the week was Parker Meadows has been ruled out for opening day with a right upper arm nerve issue. It's actually called the musculocutaneous nerve. There isn't a timetable for his return. He's going to start the season on the 10-day injured list, which means he's out until at least April 6th. But if that nerve doesn't wake up, the potential return date here, that could be pushed back even further than that. I remember when I talked to Dr. Brian Scholes, the team physician for the Los Angeles Angels, when this first went down, and he told me that the nerve could reactivate in 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months. Now, the injury, it occurred February 22nd. So February 22nd, we're not even a month into this thing yet when you consider it's March 17th. Right now. So if this happens to be a 2-month thing before the nerve wakes up, now we're talking about late April before Meadows is able to start throwing and swinging. And that means he's not coming back until at least, mid-May at the earliest, right? So that's probably worst case scenario, mid-May for Parker Meadows. But I think we need to keep the worst case scenario in mind, because this has already lingered for almost a month now. And last I checked in with Parker, he's still feeling some numbness in the forearm, and that's not a good sign. So best case scenario is that the nerve wakes up today, which would put Meadows on track to return when he's eligible to come off the injured list on April 6th, missing pretty much just 8 games of the regular season. That's best case scenario. But obviously worst case scenario, maybe you're looking at more of a mid-May to late May return, which would obviously be devastating for the Tigers. There's a lot of unknown still, but the latest that we know is that Parker Meadows will not be active for opening day. Then you have Matt Vierling, another outfielder. He's going to play more right field, but also he's kind of your backup center fielder. He remains sidelined with a right shoulder strain. More specifically, it's a strained rotator cuff muscle in his right shoulder. No timetable for his return, but I'm expecting him to get a follow-up MRI sometime in the near future. Once that happens, we should get a better idea for when he could return. And then another notable injury update, Wenceel Pérez, essentially the third string center fielder who probably was going to go to Triple-A Toledo before both these injuries happened. The Vierling injury, that opened up the door for Wenceel Pérez to make the roster. And then the Parker Meadows injury. That allows for Wenceel Pérez to be the everyday center fielder and maybe even the leadoff hitter as well. He has returned from low back tightness. He hadn't played since March 2nd, missing 11 games in a row, and then he returned for Saturday's game against the Phillies. Now, he received a cortisone injection to address lingering back discomfort, so hopefully the back doesn't flare up again because Perez has a history with lower back issues. But the Tigers have their center fielder and probably their leadoff hitter since Meadows and Vierling are injured. That's Wenceel Pérez. So it's good to see Wenceel healthy, but I just want to say really quickly, shout out to Ryan Kreidler. He was playing pretty much every day in center field during the absences of all those guys, which was pretty incredible for a guy to be doing that in spring training. But anyway, Parker Meadows is still down. Matt Vierling is still down. Wenceel Pérez is on the up and up. That's the latest on the Tigers' injuries. And it does really factor into the opening day roster prediction when you look at what could be, especially with the position players, right? You have these position player locks. You have Jake Rogers is locked in. Cole Keith is locked in. Gleyber Torres is locked in. Zach McKinstry, you bet. Riley Green, of course. Wenceel Pérez, Kerry Carpenter, Dylan Dingler, Andy Ibáñez, Javier Baez. That's 10 guys. Now you got 3 spots open. Now 2 of those spots were supposed to be occupied, right? That was supposed to be Parker Meadows, Matt Vierling. But you got 10 players who are locked in. You got 3 spots that are open. Jace Jung, Trey Sweeney, Spencer Torkelson, Justin Henry Malloy, Jahmai Jones, Ryan Kreidler. All of those guys remain in the competition for those 3 spots. I have Trey Sweeney, Spencer Torkelson, and Justin Henry Malloy making the team, with Jace Jung, Jahmai Jones, and Ryan Kreidler getting sent to Triple-A Toledo. Then you go to the rotation. You have Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty, Reese Olson. Those 3 pitchers are locked in. That leaves 2 spots open in the starting rotation. You got Jackson Jobe, Casey Mize, Kenta Maeda, and Kiter Montero still in the competition for those 2 spots. I have Jackson Jobe and Casey Mize making the rotation, with Kenta Maeda going to the bullpen and Kiter Montero getting sent to Triple-A Toledo. Speaking of the bullpen locks. Tommy Kahnle, Jason Foley, John Brebbia, Will Vest, Bo Brisky, and Tyler Holton. Plus, I have Kenta Maeda in the bullpen. So with Kenta Maeda, that's 7 players, leaving 1 spot open in the bullpen. It's Andrew Chafin, Brendan Hanafy, Brant Herter, Sean Gunther still in the competition for that 1 spot. I have Andrew Chafin making the bullpen just based on track record, but he hasn't thrown a pitch faster than 90.3 miles an hour in 3 spring training appearances, even though his sinker averaged 91.7 miles per hour last season. It's down nearly 2 miles an hour, and we're only 10 days away from opening day. I'm still holding out hope that he's able to boost that velocity just as he continues to build up his workload. But if the velocity for Andrew Chafin doesn't increase, a spot opens up for Hanafy, Herter, or Gunther. I like Herter when he's at his best, and I think AJ Hinch likes Brant Herter when Brant Herter is at his best, but he struggled this spring to repeat his delivery. He's got that little rock in his delivery, and it just hasn't been timed up. So I'm not so sure about Brant Herter at this point. And then Sean Gunther just hasn't been great. Like, he hasn't been the same pitcher that we saw he was down the stretch. So maybe it's Brendan Hanafy if Andrew Chafin gets sent to Triple-A Toledo, which is possible because Chafin is on a minor league contract. Hanafy has been lights out in spring training. And I know AJ Hinch has been very impressed with him, even though nobody's really talking about him right now. So we talked about the injuries. We talked about where the roster battles stand. And that's where I'm at right now. Trey Sweeney, Spencer Torkelson, and Justin Henry Malloy as the final 3 position players, with Jace Jung and Jahmai Jones at Triple-A Toledo, Jackson Jobe and Casey Mize as the final 2 starting pitchers, with Kenta Maeda to the bullpen and Kiter Montero to Triple-A Toledo, and Andrew Chafin as the final relief pitcher. But don't be surprised if Hanafy or Herter makes the team. We have 10 days until opening day. A lot can change here as we chug along. But Mark, those are my predictions. Kind of what are some of your thoughts there? Not only with the position players, but also with the pitchers in the bullpen too. I think it matters just as much.
All right. So I think you're spot on about the position players. If you swing the bat, you come north. It's not a real complicated circumstance. It's only complicated by the fact that their third base / right fielder is not coming back for another month. And their center fielder, the straw that stirs the drink, is gone for an undetermined amount of time. And if you go read about this injury, we should be happy if he's back by the middle of May. He could be, gone for longer than that. It's a strange injury. There's no guarantee when it's waking up. They could have to perform a surgical procedure on it. It's a strange, not good injury that could be over tomorrow and could be over in July. But let's assume you're correct about the position players. Where you and I are going to have an argument about is A, We both know who the 5 starting pitchers are. That's a lock. Unless Jackson Jobe really throws horrible in his next outing. Casey Mize is a lock for the rotation right now. There's nothing you can discuss about that. Kenta Maeda, if I was Scott Harris, I'd be trying to shop Kenta Maeda for anything, eating as much salary as I needed to, because right now, Kenta Maeda, he's cut. So I don't care that he's struck out 19 guys in spring training. I do care that he's given up 8 runs in his last 5 innings, because we saw this last year. So I got a feeling that AJ Hinch is not real happy about that idea either. The other thing that I'm really curious that you said to me, but you've been down there for like 5 weeks. Are you sitting in the sun too long? Because who's the best reliever you've seen outside of Tyler Holton? I mean, whose stuff has been the best, most dominant reliever they've been running out there against pseudo major league hitters the last 4 or 5 times you've watched them throw?
Brendan Hanafy's been pretty nasty.
So if you don't think Brendan Hanafy is on the roster, something's the matter, because he's been lights out. Added a mile an hour to his fastball, really, really improved his slider. He's quite good, much better than Jason Foley, who's kind of rounding into shape at 94.7 miles an hour, 2 miles an hour below his normal throwing velocity. It's not been great. I'm not saying he's not making the team. I'm saying he's on double secret probation, but I just don't see a spot for Kenta Maeda. I really don't. And I think wasting time by taking him north and saying prayers over him and wishing that he got better. Yeah. Okay. Just admit your mistake. Move on. I hear the New York Yankees need a starting pitcher. Maybe they're willing to pony up $2 million and a plane ticket. So let's see what happens with that. But just don't see him breaking camp as a viable part of what could be a really tremendous pitching staff. So we'll see what happens. Does mean that right fielder Spencer Torkelson will be coming north with the Detroit Tigers. I do hope they make him wear a helmet out there. If you've ever seen him chase pop-ups, I can't imagine what a high drive towards the wall and right center field's going to look like. It's not going to be pretty. So, all right, let's jump into question 2 of the big 2. Should the Tigers put third baseman Jace Jung on the opening day roster, or should he start the season in Triple-A Toledo?
Yeah, as part of my latest roster prediction, I did predict Jace Jung to Triple-A Toledo, which means a platoon of Zach McKinstry and Andy Ibáñez at third base. And in that case, McKinstry would start against right-handed pitchers and Ibáñez would start against left-handed pitchers, which therefore means Andy Ibáñez is probably going to be starting opening day against Blake Snell, whereas Zach McKinstry is still going to get the most of the reps at third base, just considering the fact that, there are more right-handed starters than left-handed starters out there. So that means Zach McKinstry on the strong side of a platoon at third base. I don't really know exactly how I feel about that, but I thought about this a lot. Like, the Tigers envisioned Jace Jung as their everyday third baseman after missing out on Alex Bregman in free agency. But the more that I thought about it, the more that I've gone over it, I'm not sure the Tigers have ever really been that high on Jace Jung. And maybe I'm wrong here, Mark, but just work with me for a second, okay? The Tigers push Jace Jung from second base to third base to accommodate for Colt Keith, who had a labrum injury earlier in his pro career and quite literally can't play third base. So I get that. But this offseason, the Tigers moved Colt Keith to first base when they signed Gleyber Torres to play second base. Why didn't the Tigers move Colt Keith to first base just to play Jace Jung at second base? It's an interesting way to look at it, right? I mean, you remember, Jace Jung won a Gold Glove in the minor leagues for his defense at second base, and he's a below-average third baseman. So when you move Colt Keith to first base, why don't you just insert Jace Jung at second base, save the money, pay a little bit more for Alex Bregman, and then you got your third baseman, and you got Jace Jung at second base, and you got Colt Keith at first base. So anyway, the Tigers end up with Colt Keith at first base, Gleyber Torres at second base. So certainly, Jace Jung, that would be the guy at third base. Nope. The Tigers were all in on trying to sign Alex Bregman to play third base. All the moves the Tigers either made or tried to make would have blocked Jace Jung, who is exactly the guy president of baseball operations Scott Harris said the Tigers couldn't block when they didn't sign Matt Chapman 2 off seasons ago. It was about earmarking at bats for young players and giving Jace Jung an opportunity, and we don't want to block Jace. That was the reason why the Tigers didn't get a third baseman the last time around. And then this time around, they were willing to block him because they wanted Alex Bregman, and I understand that. But at the same time, my point is, the more that I think about it, and the more I wonder if the Tigers actually like Jace Jung, because if they liked him, and if they wanted to give him more opportunity to establish himself in the big leagues, I don't think we'd be having this conversation right now. Like if they were all in, I think they would have made it pretty clear he's on the team, no matter what happens in spring training. Like I understand guys are going to go through ups and downs in performance, and you can only take so much out of spring training performance. And, you hope that some of the things that he's struggling with right now, such as hitting the ball hard, like will ultimately correct itself because, he's a guy that's shown that he could hit in the minor leagues. So Mark, help me understand this. You missed out on Alex Bregman, and then you express your excitement for Jace Jung and say you want him to make your team, but then Jace Jung might not make your team. Like make all this make sense to me with Jace Jung.
I think it's an easy answer, Ev. I mean, we've discussed this many, many times, and I'm going to revert this back to AJ Hinch. And I think what you and I have always discussed about AJ Hinch, and at the top of the list of things we love about AJ Hinch, and the first rule of Hinch is you need to earn your spot. It's a show me ball game when it comes to AJ Hinch. He is happy to give you opportunity. When you are provided opportunity, you have to demonstrate that you're up to the task of playing. So you have to perform. If you perform, you play for AJ Hinch.
Mark, it's not even 15 games in spring training. And that gets back to the actual question. Like, should he be on the opening day roster or not? Like, I think the Tigers should put Jace Jung on the opening day roster because of his upside on offense. But I don't think that's going to happen based on what I'm hearing. And a lot can change in the next week, especially if Jace Jung gets locked in at the plate. But the Tigers aren't pleased with his contact quality. Like, not a lot of hard hits. He's pressing. He's certainly feeling the pressure of being on this, roster bubble right now. And we're seeing that in his performance. He's 4 for 33 with 4 walks and 10 strikeouts in 14 games. That's a 121 batting average. He had 2 hits in his first game. Since then, just 2 hits in his last 13 games. He hit a home run in Tuesday's game. That snapped a 229-day homer drought. But I don't think he's going to make the team, even though he should, because the Tigers need all the upside they can get on offense. Like, don't you roll the dice at a certain point? I understand performance, and I get that it matters, but it's been less than 15 games in spring training. The defense at third base has actually been pretty good, so let's tip the cap to him for that, actually, because that was the biggest knock on him coming into this camp. And you know what? The bat hasn't heated up yet. 4 walks, 10 strikeouts, 14 games. I get it. He's hitting 121. You never want to see that. At a certain point, don't you look up and down at your lineup and say, man, where can we get some impact? Let's roll the dice, take a calculated risk, take this guy north with us and give him an opportunity to play third base. And I understand it's a little bit different too, because, the Dodgers are loaded with left-handed relievers, and you're also going to have to face Blake Snell. So how much is he really going to play in that first series? But then you look ahead to that Mariners series. Mariners are going to roll out 3 right-handed pitchers, and their bullpen's pretty much all right-handed as well. So you could really use Jace Jung in that Mariners series. So again, I go back and forth on Jace, but I mean, Mark, don't you roll the dice at a certain point? Don't you take the upside because you look up and down your lineup and where's the offense coming from? Like Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, like Colt Keith, is he really going to hit for power? Like these guys can't do it by themselves. You need as much help as you can get, I would think.
My comment about Jace Jung is when you're hitting a soft 121, you don't get latitude. You're going to have to either hit the ball hard this next 10 days, or you're going to go to Toledo and work it out. I mean, the Major League Baseball season is a very, very long season, man. It's 26 weeks, 162 games. If it takes them 4, 5, 6 weeks to start hitting the ball hard, so be it. But, you know what you're going to get with Zach McKinstry, even though it's not very much offense. But he's annoying as can be and draw an occasional walk. And, he's going to get some at-bats. What I really think is going to happen is what they really don't like to happen, which is Andy Ibáñez is going to face some right-handed pitching. And Andy Ibáñez can hit. So if you have to overplay Andy Ibáñez for a little bit while you're waiting to see if Matt Vierling heals up and is able to play some third base, or Jace Jung heats up at Toledo, Jace Jung's going to have to hit his way on the team now. He's hit his way off. Now he has to hit his way back on. So as far as the long-term plans, we can get into that later, because if you watched, the prospect game today, there was a lot of interesting stuff that went on in the prospect game today. We got an answer to a lot of questions today that we had no idea we could discuss, but we'll get into that a lot later in this podcast.
Just to be fair on Andy Ibáñez, he hit 161 last year against righties with a 400 OPS. And I get it. I think Andy Ibáñez can hit lefties, and he has shown that he can do it in the past, but at a certain point, Andy Ibáñez knows he's a lefty specialist. Mentally, Andy Ibáñez knows he is on this roster to hit lefties. So how can you expect Andy Ibáñez to therefore go out and just hit righties? I think it is a fair question to ask. When you have been put into this role for 2 years now. How do you expect this guy to deviate from the role and then have performance against right-handed pitchers when he doesn't even really face right-handed pitchers? He hasn't faced right-handed pitchers on a consistent basis in 2 years. So to think that, Andy Ibáñez could just step right in and face righties, and that's a little bit concerning to me. And I don't like what Zach McKinstry brings offensively on a day-to-day basis. And so, again, a lot of this is all because of these outfield injuries, and there's a trickle-down effect with all of this. And so, once you have Matt Vierling getting healthy and Parker Meadows getting healthy, things will shore up a little bit. But it's just a little bit disappointing that we are sitting here and it's March 17th, 2025, and we're talking about Andy Ibáñez and Zach McKinstry at third base. To me, that's just a little bit frustrating.
First of all, Andy Ibáñez and another iteration of Andy Ibáñez in 2021, we was playing reasonably regularly for a while. The Texas Rangers did have 175 plate appearances against right-handers, had a 674 OPS, 4 dongs, and like a 7%
Mark,
walk.
2021, that was AJ Hinch's first year as a Tigers manager.
Yep.
2021 was a long time ago, man. Like, you go back to 2021 and don't even get me started on 2021. Like, some of the guys that were on that team, like Jacoby Jones. Jacoby Jones was roaming center field in 2021. So I don't want to hear about 2021 performance.
All I'm saying, when he was getting a little more frequent, regular at bats against righties, he wasn't 475 OPSing either.
I just wish you were a little bit more concerned. That's all.
Would we have liked to have seen Scott Harris be a little more proactive about getting backup help at third base, assuming, they were going to somehow need help there? Of course. Could you plan on the idea that Jace Jung would totally stop hitting? Matt Vierling would get injured and be out for all of spring training and probably the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season? No way. Okay. So now you're down to choice 3 at third base, really choice 4, because they somehow figured out how not to sign Alex Bregman. So, can you be mad about it? Sure. Do I think that by the 1st of June, this will all be worked out? Well, it better be. Do I think they're looking for alternatives to protect themselves at this point in center field and third base in the last week of spring training? Oh, I bet your ass they are. So, I think, we have 11 days until the season starts. It wouldn't shock me if we predicted the roster correctly. It also wouldn't shock me if they made an acquisition at third base or for backup center fielder, and some of these guys did not make the team, okay? As for crazy ideas like Justin Henry Malloy playing third base, not happening. But on the other hand, Spencer Torkelson is going to take some turns in right field, so crazy stuff is happening. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we have a lot more things to discuss. We'll be back at 60. All right, we're back. So let's get into a little bit of what we were hitting on at the end of question 2 of the Big Two. Did Scott Harris do enough this offseason to prepare the Tigers for success in 2025? Let's go through it.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. Like, Parker Meadows, Matt Vierling injured. Where is Anthony Santander? No solidified third baseman. Where is Alex Bregman? Shortstop, I view that as a big position of weakness. Where is Ha-Seong Kim? Like, I think the Tigers should have gotten another right-handed hitter, and the Tigers wanted to do it, but you put all your eggs in one basket and it doesn't work out. That was Alex Bregman. So if you're going to put all of your eggs in one basket, and if you're not even going to offer Anthony Santander, even though you're calling to check in on him, then you better get your guy in Alex Bregman. It's the great Andrew Friedman quote from December of 2016. Quote, "If you're always rational about every free agent, you will finish third on every free agent." End quote. And that's basically the Tigers with Alex Bregman. Like, you had 2 offers from Alex Bregman to the Tigers. Yes, you heard me correct. Alex Bregman made offers to the Detroit Tigers, and the Detroit Tigers said no to Alex Bregman. It was 7 years, $200 million, no deferred money. It was 6 years, $186 million with an opt-out clause after the first season, no deferred money. The Tigers turned down both of those offers from Bregman's camp. They could have had him. Like, don't let anyone tell you Bregman didn't want to play for the Tigers, because he made offers to the Tigers. If the Tigers said yes, then Alex Bregman is a Detroit Tiger. Bregman ultimately signed with, the Boston Red Sox. It was 3 years, $120 million, $60 million of that deferred. The present day value of that contract, 3 years, $85 million. So that's like $28 million for the average annual value in present day value for that contract. $28 million a year is essentially what he signed for with the Boston Red Sox. The Tigers, the offers that they turned down from Bregman, it was $28.5 million AAV and $31 million AAV in present day value. And then Bregman signs with the Red Sox for $28 million AAV. So again, Tigers turned down offers that were $28.5 per year or $31 per year. And then Bregman ultimately signs for $28 million per year. So that's kind of where it's at, right? Like if the Tigers really wanted Bregman, they would have had him. And it's the Andrew Friedman quote that I keep going back to. Like, quote, if you're always rational to every free agent, you will finish third on every free agent, end quote. And in this case, the Tigers finished second or maybe third because the Cubs were the other finalists along with the Tigers and the Red Sox. It's just disappointing. You didn't get Alex Bregman. You didn't get Anthony Santander. You didn't get Ha-Seong Kim. You had a below average offense and you upgraded by swapping Gleyber Torres for Spencer Torkelson. And now if Torkelson actually hits, you can't even get him in the lineup because the guy you signed, that's Gleyber Torres, forced the Tigers to make Colt Keith the everyday first baseman without ever seeing him play first base. So that's where I'm at on all this, Mark, is it's just like, I feel like the Tigers, specifically Scott Harris, just didn't do enough this offseason. And you're right. You can't predict injuries. You cannot predict Parker Meadows is going to go down or Matt Bierling is going to go down with an injury, but Anthony Santander still would have fit on this roster with those guys healthy. You couldn't predict that Jace Jung would struggle at third base in spring training, specifically on offense, even though his defense has been pretty solid. You couldn't have predicted that, but Alex Bregman still could have fit on this roster. And in shortstop, positional weakness, look at what Trey Sweeney's doing and what he has done. Look at what Javier Baez is doing and has done. That is a position of weakness. Ha-Seong Kim, he still would have fit on this roster, even with both Javier Baez and Trey Sweeney. So you could have went out and gotten those guys anyway. That's kind of my point. You're right. You couldn't predict a Parker Meadows or a Matt Bierling injury. You couldn't predict Jace Jung struggling with the bat. You couldn't predict, Trey Sweeney still not really able to figure it out. And, Javi Baez being Javi Baez, you can only expect so much there. But that doesn't mean that barred you from getting Anthony Santander or Alex Bregman or Ha-Seong Kim. But the Tigers threw all their eggs in one basket. They had offers on the table from Alex Bregman. Like, I just think in a situation like that where you're going to put your eggs in one basket like that, you just got to get it done because it protects you from all these different things that have now happened. Like, I feel so much differently about the Tigers in 2025 with Anthony Santander or Alex Bregman on this roster. And Ha-Seong Kim, I know he was injured and he wasn't going to be on time for opening day, but you still feel better with him coming into the fold at some point, maybe in May, knowing that, hey, even if the shortstop situation is shaky, and even if Javi Baez has to become a true utility player, and Trey Sweeney needs to be in Triple-A Toledo because he's just not ready, and maybe he's never going to be ready, at least we got Ha-Seong Kim coming. Like, you feel good about those kind of things, but in this situation, like, what's there to really feel good about? All you feel good about is the fact that maybe Parker Meadows is going to come back. Maybe Matt Bierling is going to come back. Like, what else do you feel good about? Like, there really isn't a whole lot. So that's why I feel like it was a miss. It was just a miss. And again, you don't really know how things are ultimately going to work out. I get it, but it just feels like, we're kind of already feeling the effect of the Tigers missing out on Alex Bregman and not prioritizing guys like Anthony Santander and Ha-Seong Kim because they tossed their eggs in one basket only to miss out.
Well, it's March 17th, 2025. We're on show number 115, and Mark Gorach is going to be the voice of reason with Scott Harris over Evan Petzold. I just wonder if there's a plague outside if I open my front door because this has never happened before.
Hey, Scott, tune in. If you didn't want to come on the podcast before, maybe after this you might.
All right. So I'll be short and sweet about this. Ha-Seong Kim, decent player. Could care less about him. Wasn't going to be ready till June. Can't worry about it. Anthony Santander, based upon the lineup they have, yeah, would love the bat. Not sure where he fits going forward. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Now, Alex Bregman, yeah, we've been over this 100 times. Bottom line is, she's signing for 3 years, $28.5 million present value. There's just no reason why you didn't offer him 4 years, $125 million. It solved every one of your problems. You got a third baseman. You didn't have to sign him for a long time. You got a middle of the order right-handed bat. So it's kind of crazy to me.
And to be fair to Scott Harris there too, if they would have offered that and maybe they tried to offer that, in that case, short-term contract, Alex Bregman did not want to come to the Tigers. And that I can understand. But the point is that there were long-term offers from Alex Bregman on the table for the Detroit Tigers to take. I'm not so sure Alex Bregman would have taken a short-term contract from the Tigers, just to be completely fair to Scott Harris on this, because I want to make sure that that's known, is that, that's how I view it based on, you read all the tea leaves, you talk to different people. And that's the sense that I get is, you mentioned like a 4-year, $125 million deal, right? Like
1 year opt out.
Yeah, 1 year opt out, then maybe we're having an interesting conversation. But he got he got 2 opt outs from the Boston Red Sox and a 3-year deal where he's going to get to go bang off the green monster. So look, I just want to be very clear that I don't think Alex Bregman was signing with the Tigers on a short-term contract, just to be completely fair with this. It would have had to have been a long-term contract. My only point was just there were offers on the table for the Tigers to take, and the Tigers said no.
All right. Now, let me just be clear about this and be fair to Scott Harris. And if you're listening, Scott, I said be fair to Scott Harris. In being fair to him, I would almost wager you that based upon going into the season, not knowing Vierling was going to get hurt or Parker Meadows, okay? Their plan at third base and shortstop was if it was not going to be good, they would either at the trade deadline or before, they go get themselves a stopgap third baseman. That's the plan now. So do I think they thought that Jace Jung was going to hit more than this? Oh, hell yeah. But he hasn't. And I don't know if that's a miscalculation. It's just a disappointment. Sometimes the player has to step up. You want to play carpe diem. You got to swing the bat. Let's go. Jace Jung, they ain't waiting forever, baby. You're going to have to work it up from Toledo if you don't start banging this week. All right. What do you think about the Tigers adding position versatility with Spencer Torkelson and Javi Ibáñez less than 2 weeks into spring training? Talk to me about that. I don't think really Spencer Torkelson position versatility is something that's real serious, but tell me what you think.
Yeah, Spencer Torkelson is going to spend some time in right field. Javier Ibáñez, he already has played third base, and he's going to probably spend some time in center field. I love the roster flexibility, and I love all the in-game moves, but what are we actually doing here, on both fronts? To me, it feels a little bit almost embarrassing, kind of, if you're the Tigers. I understand you got to do what you got to do, but Spencer Torkelson has been sent to Triple-A Toledo twice in the past 3 years, including last season. Javier Ibáñez has been the worst hitter in baseball for a couple years, and we're going to count on these guys as pinch hitters in late game situations, and then we're going to count on them in newish positions late in games. Again, I go back to why isn't Anthony Santander on this team? Why isn't Alex Bregman on this team? And for what it's going to look like, Ibáñez will be solid at third base. He's done it before. He's a good infielder. He's going to be okay in center field, even though we haven't seen him there before. He's athletic. I think he'll be just fine. As for Torkelson, though, I think that's going to be just a complete disaster in right field. He played right field for 24 games in the Cape Cod League in 2018. Now, that was back when he was just 18 years old, but he made 4 errors in 37 chances. He also struggles with pop-ups at first base. I just cannot see it going well for him in right field, especially in late game situations. Again, if in-game moves force Spencer Torkelson to right field in the final 3 innings of a baseball game where it's a close game, I don't want to see that. And in the same sense, I don't really want to see Javier Ibáñez pinch hitting in late game situations either. I don't really care who it's against. And even though he might be fine in center field, to see him get shuffled around to center field, that's not a great feeling. So again, I get what the Tigers are trying to do. It makes sense to me. If Kerry Carpenter's playing right field and Torkelson pinch hits for Carpenter, then maybe Torkelson has to play a couple innings in right field. If Trey Sweeney is at shortstop, and if Javier Ibáñez pinch hits for, say, Zach McKinstry, then maybe Javi has to play a few innings at third base. It all makes sense. To me, though, it just feels very second tier to be doing this when you're trying to win the American League Central. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is exactly what the Tigers need. Maybe Torkelson in right field and Javi at third base and center field is all part of the secret sauce. And trust me, I understand this. If anyone can make something of this, it's AJ Hinch. I have the utmost respect for him and what he does with the chess moves. But again, where is Anthony Santander? Where is Alex Bregman? Even where is Randall Grichuk? All those players would have made your team better whether you had injuries or not. But now that there are injuries, I don't know. It just looks pretty bad to me. That's my take on all this. Even though I get what the Tigers are trying to do, this isn't sexy at all. And I don't really see it going well.
All right. So just to add some clarity from 2 people who are usually brutally honest about baseball truth in the 2 of us. Over under how many innings? Over under Spencer Torkelson, 10 innings in right field in 25 over under 10 innings for the year.
For the year, for sure. And I think it all depends on how quickly does Matt Vierling and Parker Meadows come back. I'm going to bet the under there if I was a betting man, just because, again, you mean, like, come on. Like, that's not a real thing. But at the same time, like, just the fact that there are in-game moves that could move him there in a late game situation, like, I just don't like it. But I would say probably the under on that.
I'd play him at third base before I played him in right field. At least I wouldn't think he was going to die. As far as Javi Baez, look, let's deal with the reality of Javi Baez. He has a few good swings as spring training, but for the most part, so far, and you know how little we put emphasis on spring training swings, okay? Javi Baez has not looked great at the plate. Chasing like crazy, not making a lot of hard contact a lot, but hey, it's spring training. But
hey, it's Javi Baez.
If he's 4 for 31 as we're going into week 3, I'm telling you, there's going to be panic upstairs at Comerica Park in the executive offices.
Well, it's a $73 million problem. And I get what you're saying. Like, it's only spring training, but at the same time, Javier Baez has shown no hitting aptitude over the last 2 years, barely any in his 3 years of the Tigers. So, I mean, again, I'm not going to say, oh, it's spring training, he'll turn it around when we get to the regular season. Like, no, that's not happening. It's a $73 million issue, and he's going to ride the pine. That's exactly what's going to happen if he doesn't turn it around. Now, I don't think Trey Sweeney is much better at shortstop, just to be completely honest. Like, I'm not all in on Trey Sweeney as the savior at shortstop. Go look at his numbers last season, go look at what he did in the postseason, and go look at what he's doing in spring training, and look at the fact that the Yankees traded him away, and then the Dodgers traded him away. Like, when you put all that in the pot, you stir it up. I don't like what I'm smelling. So that's just where I'm at. The shortstop position, it's a position of weakness. But yeah, sure, Javi Baez, play some third, play some center field, play some shortstop, like whatever. Like, you got to do what you got to do to get some at-bats, and we'll see if he's able to settle in at a certain point. Obviously, you pray he can, because if he's able to become an everyday shortstop again, even as a below-average hitter, like that's a pretty good thing for the Detroit Tigers, not only in 2025, but maybe in 2026 as well. I'm not so sure it really helps them out beyond that, just because you got guys like Kevin McGonigal and Bryce Rayner and those kind of guys coming. But yeah, Spencer Torkelson, how much is he really going to play right field? Probably not a whole lot. Javier Baez, move him around, yeah, whatever. But at the same time, it still kind of feels like it could be. Now, again, if these guys hit, it's a little bit different, but it just feels like it could be dead weight on a roster.
No more dead weight than Kenta Maeda and a $15 million signing for their starting rotation, who's now taken multiple shots and
Totally fair.
Had 3 starts last year. I mean, yes, there's been some very questionable decisions made about a lot of things. It sure seems like, like I said. All right, so let's get to the big question of the day here, which is Wenceel Pérez the answer in center field while Parker Meadows and Matt Vierling are sidelined with injuries? Or should we just default either to a 4A caliber pickup this week, or just turn it over to Riley Green and play Jay Hen in left?
If it's 10 days, give me Wenceel Pérez. If it's 15 days, give me Wenceel Pérez. If we're talking 20 to 30 days, Tigers should either think about turning things over to Riley Green or finding a replacement center fielder. Like, I know the Tigers don't want Riley Green to play center field every day, so go get old friend Derek Hill for a month or something like that. He's out of options. He can't be sent to the minor leagues without clearing waivers. So maybe that's an idea the Tigers could consider. Parker Meadows or Matt Vierling are going to miss an extended period of time rather than just, 10, 15 days into the regular season. Now, we will see Riley Green in center field. For example, if Wenceel Pérez starts in center field and the opposing team brings in a left-handed reliever to face him in, say, the 7th inning, then the Tigers would opt to use Andy Ibáñez or Justin Henry Malloy or Spencer Torkelson as a pinch hitter in that situation, because those guys are pretty solid against left-handed pitchers. But after the pinch hit situation, Ibáñez or Malloy, like, they would have to play left. Green then would slide over to center field for the final innings of the game. But the Tigers do not want Riley Green to be the full-time center fielder because they're trying to protect the health of his legs. He has dealt with leg injuries in each of the past 2 seasons, including a left fibula stress reaction in 2023 and a right hamstring strain in 2024. Playing center field, it requires more running. That increases the risk of leg injuries. And given Riley Green's injury history, the Tigers had to move him to left field to reduce his running workload. They know they need to keep their best player healthy. So I'm good with the Wenceel Pérez plan with Riley Green as the backup center fielder, as long as it's not more than like 10 to 15 days into the regular season. If we're pushing 20 days into the regular season, you got to make a move and go find somebody else, I think. Like if you know that it's going to take that long. And I think the Tigers should get a feel for how long it's actually going to be by the end of this week. So if that nerve sparks in Parker Meadows by, let's say the end of the week before they announce their opening day roster, before everything gets set, then I think the Tigers feel pretty good about Wenceel Pérez. If Matt Vierling goes in for the follow-up MRI, and the follow-up MRI, it says, hey, everything's clean in there. You can start your rehab program. You can start that return to play program. And, we can expect you to be back in, say, 20 days or so. Like if the Tigers are pretty confident either in Parker Meadows or Matt Vierling by the time we get to the end of the week, by the time that they break camp, go to San Francisco for those 2 exhibition games, then I think they go with the Wenceel Pérez plan. But if we're talking about 20, 30 days, and the Tigers know that they're not going to have Parker Meadows or Matt Vierling into May, well, then we're at a certain point where you got to go out and you got to get some help. And that obviously then impacts, does Torque make the team? Does Jahan make the team? Does Jace Jung make the team? Like all these different scenarios come into play. If you go out and you get another center fielder and you put him on the opening day roster, then we'll have more to talk about on next week's episode. But yeah, I'm cool with Wenceel Pérez if it's 10, 15 days. Anything beyond that, let's find some other help.
All right. So let's review. Last year, Evan Petzold, Mark Gorash, big Wenceel Pérez fans, vastly overperformed his raw newspaper numbers, was annoying as can be. A lot of really good at-bats, a lot of big hits, a lot of good stuff. Okay. Have seen nothing of that when he has been healthy this spring. We need to see some of that now. Don't have time when you're playing for money to wait to see if it comes back. They have too many holes. They got a center field hole. They got a shortstop hole. They got a third base hole. There's too many holes. You have too many holes to be carrying a $10 million reliever who you're not sure you can get outs in a major league game. These are tough discussions to be having, but you're going to have them.
And that's what concerns me about Wenceel Pérez, though, is like, you look at the numbers and what he did last year, it was 242 with 9 home runs, 32 walks, 92 strikeouts. But you got to remember what he did. He had a really hot start, and then he hit 223 in his final 83 games, and he hit 184 in his final 30 games. Yes, he had some big hits, but also like he wasn't very good in his last 83 games and in his last 30 games, like wasn't great. And then as a switch hitter too, like Wenceel Pérez is hitting 251 with a 700 OPS against right-handed pitchers as a left-handed hitter. But when he faces left-handed pitchers, it's hitting 200 with a 600 OPS. So the performance is worse against left-handed pitchers. If you're going to have a guy and you're going to run him out there every day in center field as a switch hitter, you want him to be able to be comfortable and perform well against both righties and lefties. And Wenceel Pérez, a lot better against right-handed pitchers than he is against left-handed pitchers. If you're going to run this guy out there to be your dude in center field, even if it's for 15 games, like you want him to be solid across the board. And just the numbers, there was a decline last year, even though he had some big hits. If you look at it over a large sample, there was a decline. And he didn't perform very well against left-handed pitchers. He was much better against right-handed pitchers, which obviously bodes well for him stepping into center field. You're going to face more righties than lefties, but I still don't love it. It's just, it doesn't make me feel great. You're right. There are a lot of holes in a lot of different places.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have some fun and discuss today's prospect game. All right, a lot of fun today. Spring breakout camp game. Saw some really pretty encouraging things. Saw a few names do some fun stuff that maybe haven't been talked about enough, but let's jump into it. Tigers prospects beat the Braves prospects in the spring breakout game 6-3. We got to see in an actual multiple at-bat game environment, Max Clark, Kevin McGonigal, Bryce Rayner, Tyron Lorenzo, Josue Briseño, and many others. Jake Miller. really interesting. What'd you think about the game?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. First off, I love the spring breakout showcase games, 4-day event. All 30 teams participate. It happens during spring training at the Grapefruit League and Cactus League stadiums in Florida and Arizona, respectively. Yeah, we saw all the Tigers' top prospects pretty much. I mean, it was pretty much all but one from their top 100 list. The Tigers have 6 players on the top 100 list from MLB Pipeline. Jackson Jobe at number 5, Max Clark at number 6, Kevin McGonigal at number 28, Bryce Rayner number 52, Tyrone Lorenzo at number 81, and Josue Briseño at number 94. Jackson Jobe, he sat out. He continues to compete for a spot in the MLB starting rotation, less than 2 weeks until opening day. But of those 6 players, 5 of them participated. And here's what we saw from those 5. Max Clark went 1 for 2 with 1 double, 1 RBI and a sacrifice fly. McGonigal went 1 for 3 with 1 single. Rayner went 2 for 3 with 2 singles and 3 RBIs. Lorenzo went 1 for 3 with 1 double and 2 strikeouts. Briseño went 1 for 1 with 1 single and 2 walks. I think it's worth noting at least that Josue Briseño started at first base. Clark started in center field. McGonigal at third base. Rayner at shortstop. Lorenzo at catcher. Briseño, by the way, he has not played catcher in an official game since May 12th, 2024. Seems like the Tigers are moving him to first base full time. Haven't heard that yet, but it sure seems like that's the case. My biggest takeaway was Bryce Rayner. Okay, like the Tigers selected Bryce Rayner with the number 11 overall pick in the 2024 draft out of Harvard Westlake High School in Los Angeles. Mark is doing the happy dance as I say this right now. He hadn't played an official game yet until the spring breakout showcase, and he's been compared to 5-time All-Star Corey Seager. Bryce Rayner looks like a future star. He stands tall in the box. He's got a smooth, effortless swing. I loved what I saw from Bryce Rayner. Like, I just love it. I love it. In his first plate appearance, he swings at a middle first pitch, 94-mile-an-hour fastball. He grounds up to third base to end the second inning, but he didn't just trot down to first base. No, he sprinted down the line. He showed really impressive speed. He made it a close play. He kind of held his arms out to indicate that he thought he was safe, but the first base umpire called him out. It was a little taste of Bryce Rayner's athleticism. And then we saw him hit for singles in his next 2 plate appearances. There was a fly ball that went oppo to the warning track in left field in the 4th inning, and then a line drive over the shortstop into shallow left center field in the 5th. Look, the left fielder should have caught that fly ball at the warning track. He took a terrible route, lost his balance, crashed into the wall. But that line drive over the shortstop's head, it was the other way, off of a 96-mile-an-hour fastball. Such an easy swing, but it produced an elite 114-mile-an-hour exit velocity. That nice, easy swing going the other way over the shortstop's head, 114-mile-an-hour exit velocity. The Tigers expect Bryce Rayner to stick at shortstop. We can discuss Max Clark and Kevin McGonigal and Jake Miller. There's a lot to talk about all these guys, but Mark, your first impressions of Bryce Rayner, what do you think? He looks like a dude, and we're just getting started.
All right. So here you have a kid that is yet to ever play a minor league baseball game. Basically signed him, stuck him on the backfields. I'm sure you got plenty of work back there and all winter to work out, but he's never played a minor league baseball game. Plays shortstop in, essentially the highest level prospect game you could play. And we have no expectations because we've never seen him play before. Let's be really blunt. The only person that's seen the kid play is my friend Brian Sikowski. That's it. So I was, frankly, and I'm pretty rough on this stuff, I was blown away. I had no idea. The skill set was amazing. And that's a beautiful thing. I see a lot of guys that had skills. Heck, Roberto Campos has some skills. In fact, Roberto Campos looked pretty damn good today for Roberto Campos. But holy smokes. First of all, grounds out in the first. Did you know he was that fast? Holy smoke, he was flying down the line.
He can move.
Almost beat a ground ball on the left side. He's a left-hand hitter. Almost beat it out and very much thought he beat it out. Next time up, went down, in a good at bat, hit a ball oppo left center that, basically clanked off the wall. And the third time up, took 96 and just absolutely torched one, to left center at 114 EV. And if you didn't get to see him throw one time, because he only threw one time, it was an absolute missile. It was a missile. So, all I can tell you, and by the way, lastly, the person I know that has by far the most beautiful hair on any male individual on earth is Evan Petzold. And Bryce Rayner had nicer hair than Evan Petzold.
Oh, I got some competition now in Tiger Town.
Oh my God. I need a picture when you get back down there. But it's what can't Bryce Rayner do? I was totally blown away.
The one thing that stood out to me right away, though, was like, again, and I mentioned it, when I talked about him initially, was just like the swing is just so smooth and effortless, but the ball jumps off the bat. Like that's something that to me, like he is not reaching for his power, and he was able to go oppo to the warning track with such a smooth swing. And then you had that same smooth, effortless, easy swing, and you hit it for a 114 exit velocity over the shortstop's head. Beautiful line drive. Like, it just looked really pure, what I saw with Bryce Rayner with the bat. And I think that's a really good sign, and that's obviously going to bode well for him. And then other things that stood out to me too, Mark, like Max Clark in center field. How about those instincts? Like, I love the flare single. He charges the ball, fields it cleanly with his glove, transfers over to his hand, and then he throws this bullet to the second baseman. Now, the lead runner who was at first base on the single to center field, he considered advancing to third. Then he jammed on the brakes, retreated to second base, and Clark instinctually just throws this bullet to the second baseman. It beats the runner retreating back to the bag, and it ends the third inning. That was really impressive to me. Another thing too, Kevin McGonigal, right? Like this is a guy that the Tigers are really, really high on for obvious reasons. He can really hit. The Tigers think he can stick at shortstop, but he started at third base in the spring breakout game, even though he's never played there during his 2 seasons in the minor leagues. It's even more interesting because McGonigal also played 1 inning at third base March 9th in an MLB spring training game in front of AJ Hinch. So maybe the new action at third base has less to do with McGonigal and more to do with the Tigers when you really think about what this guy can do with the bat. Like the Tigers had neglected third base for the past 3 years. If they still have an opening at third base heading into the 2026 season, heading into opening day 2026, and you got Javier Baez or Trey Sweeney locked in at shortstop, and Colt Keith slides back to second base, let's just say, because maybe Torkelson turns it on, or Tyrone Lorenzo, they want to get his bat in the lineup, so maybe they have to move Colt Keith back to second base. Let's just say shortstop, second base, let's say it's clogged going into 2026, and you need a spot for Kevin McGonigal. Wouldn't you want to play Kevin McGonigal at the hot corner? Like that seems like a real possibility in 2026, and this is telling me the Tigers are very much keeping that door wide open because we've only seen Kevin McGonigal at shortstop and second base, and now we're seeing him sprinkled in at third base. So I think that's really interesting. And then we saw what he did in the third inning. He sprints toward the third base line. He drifts into the outfield grass. He fields a bouncer. It bounced twice, and then plants his back foot, fires a one-hop laser to Josue Briseño at first base. He scoops it cleanly. The runner beat it by like half a step, but Kevin McGonigal on that play alone left no doubt about his arm strength. It is an above average arm fit for third base. And everyone knows Kevin McGonigal is going to hit. The only unknown is where is this guy going to play defensively? Third base could be the answer, especially if he moves quickly throughout the minor leagues this year and puts himself on the doorstep of his MLB debut by this time next year. You wouldn't want to miss out on an opportunity for Kevin McGonigal to make your opening day roster in 2026 because all he's played is shortstop and second base. I love that they're giving him opportunities at third base. And I think it's really telling about where things could go here in the very near future. And I'm talking within the next year or so.
All right. So let's touch on McGonigal a little bit. I mean, all of us who are pretty good at this are in some ways amateur scouting directors, and we make evaluations watching guys play. And for my buddies that I have chats with or I'm in chats with, I've expressed some of my feelings about certain players that either I don't think can play at all, or I don't think they can hit, or they have certain issues. I like Tayron Lorenzo. I worry a lot if he's going to be able to hit velocity. He hasn't shown me really that he can. He can really destroy 94 and less, or he kills mistake breaking balls. He's really good at that. I still wonder if he can hit 95 plus.
He's got some whiff in his game too. Let's just be fair. He's got good play discipline, but he's also got some swing and miss in there too, Lorenzo.
He does. It's just the same way we feel about Torque. All right. Torque will kill 92. It's just, there's not a lot of 92 in Major League Baseball anymore. Now, let's talk about Kevin McGonigal. Every time I see him, every time I watch him, the more at-bats he gets, the better he gets. The competition's never too big for him. The moment's never too big for him. And by the way, you want to talk about somebody that the moment's never too big for. That's the Max Clark special right there. Max Clark, he's got things he needs to improve on in his game. I still have some concerns about some things at the plate, especially power, but the moment is never too big for Max Clark. He, especially with men on base, becomes a much better hitter. But let's get back to McGonigal. I said this a month ago. I'll reiterate what I said then now. If they need him to, Kevin McGonigal can play Major League Baseball for the Detroit Tigers, whether it's at shortstop or third base, some point in time this year. He will torch the minor leagues. He is way too good a hitter. That boy can hit, and he's a baller.
So do you think by playing him at third base, they're leaving that door open, not just for 2026, but maybe for 2025? As Kevin McGonigal stepping in as a Tigers third baseman in 2025 at some point?
100%. I don't think it's what they want to do, but if they need to do it, I think when else would you find, isn't spring training to find this stuff out exactly?
Oh, definitely. And that's exactly what they're doing. But I'm just curious how quickly it's actually going to show up in the big leagues. And it's fascinating to hear you say maybe 2025. And you know what? I can get on board with that. If he's hitting, I can get on board with that. I'm not sure the Tigers are going to be on board with that, but maybe they will. Maybe they'll show some aggression if they have a chance to make the playoffs, right? Like,
if you watch Kevin McGonigal's at bats, and it was,
I've seen them. They're the real deal.
In irony, not intentionally, it just worked out this way today. You couldn't have had a better team for the Tiger spring breakout hitters to face than this particular Atlanta Braves team, who kept rolling out one guy after the next, throwing 95, 98. That's exactly what I wanted to see all these guys face. I don't want to see guys facing 93 like they're going to see in high A. I want to see them facing major league caliber stuff. Maybe it's not located in major league caliber spots, but I want to see them challenged by major league caliber velocity. That's what I needed to see. And it was very, very encouraging what we did see. Yes, they struck out a lot in the last 3 innings. Yes, they're minor, not major prospects were playing then. But at the same time, if I would have told you rolling into this game that in my mind that Max Clark was the third best prospect on the field for the Detroit Tigers today after their best prospect after what we saw, and if you don't think Bryce Rayner is their best prospect now, I'm not sure what you were watching today. McGonigal, to me, is their second best prospect. He's the closest being ready to play. He's a much better hitter than Max, and he plays an infield position, a position of need. Okay? Max improved his game a ton last year. He needs another 600 at-bats this year to keep polishing his game. Okay? But to think that you have those 3 prospects in the Tiger farm system, holy smokes. Bryce Rayner, if he plays every day like he played 6 innings today, he could be the number 1 prospect in baseball in 2026. I mean, it was that awe-inspiring watching him play. Holy smokes. I had no idea. He has not played a minor league baseball game yet, and he was the most interesting player on the field today. Holy smokes. All right, let's touch on a couple other things. I don't know what did you like Roberto Campos today? He had a pretty good swing one time. His arm looked pretty good in right, or you don't really care about Roberto Campos?
No, I care about Roberto Campos. I just hope he figures it out, and I'm kind of tired of waiting.
Okay. Jake Miller, how'd you think his first couple innings went?
I really like Jake Miller. I mean, a left-hander, 8th round pick in the 2022 draft, not ranked on MLB, top 100 prospects, but he ranks as the Tigers number 18 prospect. I think he's an underrated name to know moving forward. He's known for his ability to fill up the strike zone. He started for the Tigers in the spring breakout game, allowed 1 run on 2 hits, 0 walks with 3 strikeouts across 2 innings, throwing 35 pitches. There was 11 pitches in the first inning. He needed 24 pitches in the second inning. Fastball sat around 95 in the first inning with a high of 96. Then it dipped to 93 by the time he finished the second inning with a low of 92. So the velocity dipped from the first inning to the second inning. And that's something to kind of watch them moving forward. Like you go and you look at what he did in 2024, it was a 1.85 ERA, 17 walks, and 104 strikeouts across 87 in 1/3 innings in 24 games, spanning 18 games in Low A Lakeland, 5 games in High West Michigan, and 1 game in Double-A Erie. Then he goes out to the Arizona Fall League, and it's 3 walks and 24 strikeouts across 16 and 2/3 innings in 6 games, making 3 starts in the Fall League, though he did have a 9.18 ERA. But again, you know, from a guy in the Arizona Fall League, you are not going to complain about 3 walks and 24 strikeouts and 16 and 2/3 innings. The big question now is going to be, are the Tigers going to develop Jake Miller as a starter or a reliever? Because he never threw more than 5 innings, never threw more than 88 pitches last season. He throws a fastball, 2 variations of a slider, and then also a changeup as well. So he has the pitch mix to make it work as a starter. But then again, the Tigers have never really stretched him out for a prolonged period of time as a guy who's given you, you know, multiple outings of 6 innings, getting into the 7th inning. Like, he's never done any of that. And he's never gone above 88 pitches in a single outing. So I'm going to be fascinated to see how they move forward with him. And we mentioned the velocity dip too. I know some of that is just guys are getting built up. So I don't want to, you know, put too much stock in that. But also, like, this is a guy who maybe he struggles to hold his stuff. I got to watch a little bit closer to learn more about Jake Miller, but he definitely caught my eye. He's someone that I had on my radar, actually going back to the Fall League last year, even a little bit before then. He's a fascinating prospect, really underrated, someone to definitely keep an eye on this year in the Tigers farm system. And, you know, we'll see if he ends up becoming anything, whether it's as a starter or as a reliever. But even if it's just as a swingman, the Tigers definitely have something here in Jake Miller to work with.
Yeah, I think we need to see him second time through a lineup. He quickly lost some of his better caliber velocity. I did absolutely love his ability to sequence and his command. Really, really much better than I had actually hoped for. I don't want to talk about prospects too long, especially these secondary guys. We could do an entire show on this, and maybe we will at some point in time in the future. But a couple other pitchers that caught my eye that are pretty highly touted: Jaden Ham, Troy Melton. I'm curious what your thoughts are on those two.
Yeah, Jaden Ham, Troy Melton, 2 right-handed pitchers in the Tigers organization. We've seen Jaden Ham, High West Michigan, Troy Melton, Double-A Erie. I like Melton's raw stuff probably better than I like Jaden Ham's raw stuff. That's just kind of where I'm at on those two. Haven't done too deep of a dive. I've seen Jaden Ham pitch once live, and I was pretty impressed. But at the same time, like, I like Troy Melton's stuff more, and I think the Tigers probably have more to work with there.
Yeah, wasn't too impressed with Jaden Ham's fastball. Loved his breaker, was really good, and he controlled it well. Troy Melton was surprisingly better than I thought for 2 reasons. One, loved the funky, short arm, dart throwing kind of release point and delivery. Reminded me of the last year of Michael Fulmer. Was topping at 99 today. Liked the slider too. Screamed reliever, but it screamed a really interesting, funky, really good 1-inning reliever. Something to watch. A guy I think has a shot to throw in the major leagues this year as a reliever at some point in time. Wouldn't be shocked to see that. Saw Tyler Rowlands, who's been pretty impressive this spring training. Kind of looked disinterested today. He's actually looked much better in real games. But yeah, it was a fun day. Josue Baseño, gotta love it. Loved his defense. Loved one really good swing. Another guy to really, really watch. Think he'll be the first baseman of the future. All right. We've talked about a lot of stuff. Before we get out of here, let's talk about what players have been cut and when should we expect the final cuts to be made this week.
Yeah, since our last podcast, the Tigers cut Hao-Yu Lee, Tyrone Lorenzo, Jordan Balzovic, Brennan White, Dietrich Enns, Matt Gage, Andrew Navigato, Akil Baddoo, Bly Madris, and Brian Servin. All those guys were cut in the past week. The Tigers still need to cut 13 more players before opening day on March 27th. Of those cuts, Andrew Navigato stands out to me. He hit .417 with 1 home run, 3 walks, and 4 strikeouts in 16 games in spring training. He played 30 innings in left field, 21 innings at second base, 6 innings at third base, and 4 innings at shortstop. AJ Hinch likes his bat. And when AJ Hinch likes someone's bat, I pay attention. The big thing is going to be adding to his defensive versatility. He was a below average defender at shortstop going back to last year. So I'm not sure how he's going to perform at other positions as the Tigers continue to add to his plate with more reps at different spots. Andrew Navigato is not on the 40-man roster, but if the Tigers need a right-handed hitting utility player, I think there is a world in which he could find his way to the big leagues in 2025, and it would be his MLB debut if he gets called up at some point. As for the final cuts, the Tigers will not finalize their 26-man opening day roster on March 23rd, which is when it's the final day of the Grapefruit League schedule in spring training. Instead, the Tigers are expected to make their roster decisions after the 2 exhibition games in San Francisco on March 24th and 25th. So I think we're going to see some guys go from Lakeland, Florida, all the way out to San Francisco for those 2 exhibition games. And they might take a handful of guys and make those cuts at the end of the 2 exhibition games. So we're looking at like the afternoon of March 26th or the morning of March 27th for the Tigers to set the opening day roster. I think there will be some guys who have some pretty tough trips going back from, it would be essentially San Francisco at that point, going back to Toledo. That obviously would be a really big bummer for a couple of guys, but I think that very well could be the case with the Tigers taking guys out there and then ultimately sending some back before they go to Los Angeles for opening day on March 27th. So we'll see who makes the team. 10 days left until opening day. A lot can still happen. A lot can change, but things are kind of starting to come into focus a little bit more now as we get closer to opening day.
All right, it's time to get out of here. I want to remind everybody to please like, rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. We are embedded in every Evan Petzold article, and I would encourage you to subscribe to the free now for the season. The deals are pretty ridiculous. It's like $1 for 6 months, so there's no excuse not to do it. I'd like to thank the editor of the Free Press, Nicole Avery Nichols, the Magic Man, Robin Chan, who saves us every week, my amazing grandsons, who were actually at my house yesterday, and it was a blast. Shout out to the soon-to-be mommy, Savannah Petzold. I wish you the best of luck. Hope you feel well. Keep growing that little Petzold baby whenever it decides it's going to come out. And until next week, maybe Evan will be a daddy. Peace.